Hello and welcome to the 349th consecutive running of Forum for a Better Understanding. You know, it's been exciting with these many years of doing this program, but today it's a real pleasure to bring back a very important group in town. It is called the Fresno Multifaith Exchange, and for 15 years they have been doing a beautiful ministry of sharing the richness of the faith of our valley through the many different houses of worship, different congregations, different traditions, different faiths. We have 4 representatives who will share the history of that group, its mission, and the way that they conduct their meetings, and invite you to participate. To my left is the Reverend Michael Torphy, Senior Minister at the Center for Spiritual Living, and also the co-coordinator this year of the Multifaith Exchange. To his side is his wife, the Reverend Valerie Torphy, the Director of Education and the Youth Director at the Center for Spiritual Living, and with Michael, co-coordinator for this beautiful ministry of Multifaith Exchange. And directly across from me, back after several years of not being on this set, is Linda Mack, who back in 1996 or so formed with Annadelle Flint the beginnings of what turned out to be the beautiful Multifaith Exchange. And she has been involved over these many years in different ways with that group. I'd like to begin, if we could, with all 3 of you sharing something about yourselves and your religious tradition, because that's obviously what the Multifaith Exchange is all about, is having people freely share their faith in a setting that is friendly, open, and non-proselytizing. Michael, could you start?
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you. I'm the Senior Minister at the Center for Spiritual Living here in Fresno, and I started this faith tradition, which is called religious science or science of mind, some 20 years ago, and got a calling and became a minister. And basically our teaching is really close to what the Multi-Faith Exchange is doing. We have, our founder, Ernest Holmes, took the spiritual truths from all major religions and blended it with science and philosophy and came up with a teaching. So basically our philosophy is a teaching organization. We teach people how to connect and to expand into their own oneness with God. We believe in the oneness of all creation, and that God isn't some man out in the sky, but an indwelling presence, and doing the inner work expands who you are spiritually. We believe that we're spiritual beings here having a human experience. And I, being a former Catholic, came to this teaching when I was at a really traumatized time of my life, going through a lot of stuff, and it just kind of turned my life around, and I decided that I wanted to pursue the classes, and it just changed my life, basically.
Well, thank you very much for that. Could you, let's let Valerie tell us something, and then we want to maybe look at some pictures of your center, because I drive by it every single day on my way home, and it makes me think of you and what you're doing at that center.
Oh, thank you.
Valerie, a little bit about yourself, and maybe a little bit more about your faith.
Okay. I found this teaching about 10 years ago, and I had been going to church and taking my children to church because it's the thing to do without finding the place that fit me. And when I walked into what is now the Center for Spiritual Living, I just knew I found my spiritual home.
It became a center for your spiritual life.
Yes.
I'm really glad. Oh, Linda, this is going to be great for you to tell us a little bit about your own Unitarian Universalist faith, and also why it is that this became almost part of that faith, is to do something like Multifaith Exchange.
Okay. Well, first of all, I was brought up unchurched, and as an adult became a Unitarian Universalist. And I am married to someone who comes from the Jewish faith, and so we have a little multi-faith going on right away, you know. And I think that as a Unitarian Universalist, you know, we draw our inspiration from many sources, including the sacred writings of all the other faiths in the world. So So it isn't a big leap for us to become involved in multifaith. And so that's where we are with this. Annadelle and I were both Unitarian Universalists. And when we became interested in this, it was just natural for us to go to our Social Justice Committee and say, we'd like to do a community ministry. And we got some help from them in terms of funding to begin the expenses of mailing and printing and all that kind of thing, and hosting some meetings. And
This
so
is back in 1996?
1996, 1997.
Who would have been some of that Social Action Committee? We know how powerful they are now. It's a wonderful group of people at the UU Church. Who was involved back in the day?
Besides Annadelle?
Yeah.
I can't tell you whether the names of the people that were. I'm blanking on that.
No
I'm sorry.
problem, because
but we do have a social justice committee that has been active for years, and it may have been Steve Sachs as the chairman.
Could have been Steve Sachs.
Could have been
Johnson's
Steve Sachs.
Still doing
Yeah.
so many positive things that are engaging the ministry.
I'm not sure he was the chairman then, but he's been chairman for many years.
Been a while.
Yeah.
Now, when you started doing this, Linda, what were some of those faith communities that you sort of like included, let's say, ground floor from the very beginning?
From the very beginning, we had the Baha'is and the Buddhists and the Jewish people, both Reform and Conservative. Nice. And we had Protestant and Catholic Christians.
Right from the start,
Right
huh?
from the start.
Good.
We had Hindus and Sikhs.
Muslims from the beginning?
Muslims from the beginning.
Gee, this is great.
And Unitarian Universalists. We had eight major faiths that we had involved from the beginning. And the way we went about this was Annadelle and I simply asked everybody we knew, who do you know? Who do you know that's Buddhist? Who do you know that's Sikh? Do you know anybody that's Sikh? We just found people, and as we found one person, we would ask that person, who do you know? And we went to religious leaders in town and said, do you have any contacts with other faith traditions? And who do you know in those faith traditions who might be interested in doing this? And we got together a group of about 30 people, and about 15 of them agreed to be on the steering committee.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Now, all of what Linda is saying and what Michael and Valerie are going to share is all available on the website. And it's actually a very simple but very adequate website for telling us the mission, the history, the way meetings are conducted, the philosophy of the group, the steering committee, the schedule of events. So I would say you'd want to go there. It's Fresno multifaithexchange.org. And by going there, you're going to be very enriched, and you'll get to hear a lot or see a lot of what we'll be discussing today. So you had these 8 major religious directions or traditions. Something about ground rules. You already knew at the beginning things needed some sort of grounding.
Well, Annadelle and I had gone to a conference down in Dallas because Annadelle had read about a similar type of program going on down in Dallas and had contacted the coordinator down there. And she invited us to this conference of North American Interfaith Alliance organizations. And we met and talked with people who did all different kinds of programs, dialogue programs and social action programs, and the kind of exchange. And the multi-faith exchange, as it was developed here, was really based pretty much on the writings of the woman who ran the multi-faith exchange in Dallas, who was a nun, Elizabeth Esperson, Roman Catholic nun, Elizabeth Esperson, who had written a book, and so we didn't invent all of this ourselves. We were able to take an existing program and present it. We presented several models to the steering committee, and they chose to do this model. Nice. And so the ground rules were pretty well laid out for us, and we simply agreed to them. And that's basically that we're going to listen to one another. we're not going to be confrontational in our questioning. We're not going to proselytize. We're not coming into the meetings with the idea of changing anybody's mind, but simply rejoicing in the diversity that we find there.
Beautiful.
And understanding one another. And that we would have refreshments, but that should be kept simple. And just basically, just basic ground rules that foster deep listening to one another.
And then
that's where we
something
think
about,
that.
maybe in the year 2000 or so, a handbook was created.
Right.
What's the handbook like?
Well, the handbook came about because even Annadelle and I found that in trying to find materials to share, most churches that prepare materials, they are for the purpose of proselytizing, and so
It's
even
sort of what they do.
that's what they're there for. And even in our church, which is basically a non-proselytizing faith, the information was a little bit strong, we felt, even for us to be handing out. So we thought it would make more sense, and also because we found that a lot of people coming into the multi-faith exchange had really no understanding at all of other people's religions. Some people didn't have a lot of understanding about their own. And so we thought it would be good to prepare, 2 or 3 or 4 pages of information, just basic information, so that everybody could read that and everybody would come into a meeting with this basic information about each faith. And so Annadelle and I took one summer and we just researched it and wrote up the book and worked with our members of our steering committee and other people to make sure it was right and published it.
And that's sort of like still the handbook that is in effect.
Exactly.
Now,
We give it out to everybody every year. You still have
Yes.
copies of it, I'm sure.
now you were with Annadelle up through 2009, co-coordinating, but then I guess realized, we've been doing this. It's nice to pass the baton once in a while.
Well, we both, for health problems, had to do that. Different health problems, but we both just found that we were no longer able, because of certain health problems, to carry it on. So.
And yet the group, by having been solidified by then almost 12 years of unity, you wound up knowing that this could be that other co-coordinators could assume the reins, as they say. At this point, they just signaled it's the halftime of our program, so we're going to take a 1-minute break, but please don't go far because we're going to change our guest. One of them, we're going to have you decide who it was, and then we'll be back with another guest to talk about his faith, and also we'll be sharing some more about the multi-faith exchange. Stay tuned.
KNXT, the nation's only full-powered broadcast station owned and operated by a Catholic diocese in the U.S. and streaming live on the internet at knxt.tv. Need your support to keep the message of the good news alive. Just go to knxt.tv, click on the Make a Financial Gift, go to Donate, and fill out your one-time or monthly offering under PayPal. It's just that easy. Your donation makes it possible for KNXT, Catholic Television, to continue its ministry by celebrating the Mass and proclaiming the gospel. Thank you from KNXT.
Hello and welcome back to the second half of our fantastic program on the I said that so we would get an applause for our multi-faith exchange. It is a wonderful group, and now we're going to be interviewing actually the current co-coordinators who this year assumed the leadership of this group. I wonder if Michael and Valerie could take turns just sharing around these 3 questions. What is it like to serve as the co-coordinators of this group? As new members to the community, what inspired you to step in and do this service to us? And also, what does personally this multi-faith exchange mean? So Michael, with any of those questions, what drew you to multi-faith exchange and how's it like being a co-coordinator?
Well, I heard about it, and I decided to go to one of the meetings. I can't remember the first synagogue or church that I went to, but it was fascinating. So I went to as many as I could, and then I told my wife about it, and she attended a few with me. And we decided we'd like to, since our faith had never been part of the multi-faith exchange, we decided we'd check out the steering committee and see what was going on. So we went, and they were having a meeting, and we ended up being coordinators. It's like one of those things where, you know, the soldiers are all lined up, and they say whoever wants to be in charge, everybody steps back and we're left. So, but it basically runs for itself. You know, there's work that has to be done, and we have to let everybody know each week what's going on and sign up people and introduce them to the faith that we're studying. But the foundation's already there, as Linda Mack said. And what brought me into it is the same thing that brought me into my religion, which is really trans-denominational. It transcends denominations and gets more into spiritual teaching. And I really believe that if we just understood what's alike about one another, instead of looking at what is different about one another, then there'd probably be more peace in the world.
Oh, there could only be.
So it was something that I thought was very important in our city and in the world, actually.
Actually, yes. Valerie, what would be the main thing you're enjoying about about the group and about your co-coordination of it? Because that puts you in a front and center position.
Yes. Well, my favorite part about each meeting is after we have the basic talk about what this faith tradition is about, we have a short break, and then we get together in small groups, and then we get to know each other. And I think every time we sit across and look at each other in the eye and discover there's a lot more about us that's the same than there is that's different, it stops that otherness. And so that's the most important thing to me about it. What was the next question you asked me?
Well, maybe might be, as a coordinator, how are you enjoying the responsibility of whatever that may entail?
Well, I'm just kind of a natural, I walk into a meeting and I walk out with the responsibility, and I've been doing that my entire life, and so it was just kind of a natural thing.
Good. Good. Well, obviously the group in its 16th year is still highly functioning, and they have had a wonderful program all year. Now, across from me, we have a new guest. Yes, Linda has bailed out, and now we have Harlan Lang, who is going to be telling us right now just a little bit, Harlan, about your Baha'i Faith. And we have some pictures. We have one from Willamette, and then we have, which is a beautiful shrine, and then we also have the local Baha'i Center. Could you please tell us something about this faith?
The Baha'i Faith is a world faith that exists in virtually every country in the world. They have organized communities of Baha'is from every religious background that exists, and ethnic backgrounds, from the mountains of New Guinea to the mountains of South America, all over the world, islands in the Pacific. And it's all based upon the teachings of Baha'u'llah, who was a messenger of God who came from Iran originally, back in the mid-1800s. There was tremendous persecution. 20,000 of the early followers were killed. Baha'u'llah was exiled to Baghdad and finally taken as a prisoner to Palestine, where he was kept as a prisoner. And that's why the world center of the Baha'i Faith is in Israel.
You know, I was wondering, how in Haifa is that beautiful, beautiful Baha'i shrine? So that's why, because he eventually ends up in Palestine.
Yes.
What are some of the main, let's say, teachings or traditions of Baha'i Faith?
The central teaching is the unity and the oneness of the human family, that all the people in the world are one family. And he says this is the age when that will be established. It always has been true, we just didn't know it. We thought we were separate, but we're all one. And he says all religions are fundamentally one, that the prophets of all religions were inspired by the same divine reality. They received their inspiration from the same source. And that the teachings that were given were tailored to the needs of that age when they were presented, the culture and the age and what they needed. And that the teachings that he gives for our age are for the world as a whole, the unity of the planet. and he taught that that we need to, science and religion need to go hand in hand, and that women should have equal rights with men, that all children should be educated, prejudices should be eliminated, all prejudices, and that was what led me to be interested in the multi-faith exchange.
Yeah.
Because prejudice is the result of ignorance or fear, actually, and then fear is caused by ignorance. So people are prejudiced against a religious group or a racial group because they're afraid of them. And they're afraid because they don't know them. And if you can bring them together where they can actually meet somebody of all the different faiths, that fear kind of subsides. And they find out, they're just like we are, and their beliefs aren't that different.
That's right.
Speaking of bringing them all together, if Greg could put up the screen now that shows the different congregations, houses of worship, of faith that you met at this year alone. And here they are. So you've met at the Sikh Center, the Islamic Center, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Hindu Center, the Center for Spiritual Living, the Reformed Jewish Temple, the Unitarian Universalist Church, a Buddhist temple, and finally at the Baha'i Center. Could you tell us, taking turns, different ways that these days of meeting, these gatherings, what happened at those sites? What is the main thing that you want to do at each of those different centers? So, for example, what happened at one of them, Michael? What's one of them that you could say, that was really nice at the temple, or what?
When we went to the Sikh temple, they took us into their sanctuary and demonstrated some stuff. And just allowing us into their sanctuary, I thought, was an honor. And at the Jewish temple, they showed us a Torah that was 700 years old.
Oh, my.
And they told us, the story would take a little time, so I'm not going to tell you the story, but they told us the story behind it, and it virtually brought me to tears.
Oh, yeah.
To how they got that Torah. So if somebody wants to find out these kind of things, they need to come and visit our multi-faith exchanges.
And one way to immediately do that is to go to the website. That's FresnoMultifaithExchange.org. Go to the website and you'll start knowing when the next meeting is, which basically it's going to be in the fall, because by the time this program airs, we will have finished all those meeting centers were all this past year, beginning in September. Valerie, where was one site that you really did enjoy, and it may have been hosting at your own center? Which one of those did you find very enriching?
Well, there's something that of all of them, but I found the practice of washing my feet and my hands before going into the Sikh temple was just an amazing experience. And then coming back and discovering that they have a kitchen, that they feed people all the time. They feed everybody who needs to be fed. I did not know that about the Sikhs, and it's a wonderful thing.
The Sikhs are awesome people. We've had them on many times on the program, but to go to a lunga and to know that there is this democratic idea of you're seated on the floor, everybody's equal, you just go get your platter of food, it's all for free, and the whole idea is if you're hungry, we will serve you food.
Yes.
It's a beautiful part of Sikhism that you just can't beat it. Tell us what maybe this year for you, Harlan, was really very invigorating, very inspiring.
I enjoyed the Hindu presentation, maybe because it was so different from most others. It comes from a culture that's so ancient and so old, and they have ideas that, once they explain them, they're not that different.
That's right.
You think, well, they just use this word or that word that means the same thing as something else that we use.
Yes.
But it was just the whole the feeling of the temple, the kind of statues and paintings and so on. It was like being in India. You just felt like you were there.
Now, they've met these monthly meetings, but there's also people representing on the steering committee from each of those congregations, from each of those centers. I wonder if there's anybody of these many different leaders, steering committee, that you do want to mention about their faith or their commitment, beginning with any one of these groups. Is there one of those congregants that you want to single out?
Not sure I understand the question.
Okay, let me try one. I would say the Roman Catholic component is the person that I know that's involved is Carmen Decker from St. Paul Newman Center. And it's really great that we as a church are participating. And it's nice to know that the St. Paul Newman Center is also a participant since the beginning. We found out from Linda. So it's great to know that Carmen is there. But you do have some very, I guess, very important members from both of the Islamic centers. Have you had much contact with like Kamal or Hamid over the year and the different ways that Islam, because they hosted one of the, went to the Masjid. Anybody else that you wanted to bring up as a person that's been involved that you have made personal connection with?
Well, Cheryl from the Latter-day Saints.
I was there that day. Tell us a little bit about Cheryl and about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which did host a beautiful day that I went.
Can you do that? We were out of town that
Okay,
week.
that's right. What happened when we went to the Latter-day Saints?
Well, they had a very nice sanctuary where the presentation was given, and I believe there was some music, I believe.
He sang,
And they had a wonderful, I mean, the food they served was just
yeah.
was
It
wonderful.
was a great soup. And
Oh, yeah, it was wonderful.
great. So that would be maybe more than what would be a normal one, because it seemed like that one was really
Yes,
awesome.
yes.
Now, the main thing about your gatherings, it seems, is the presentation of, let's say, the teaching of the faith,
Yes.
but then also a 45-minute period when you're doing table work, right?
Yes.
Tell me in 10 seconds how important that is.
Well, as my wife referred to earlier, that's the most important thing to me, because you are talking one-on-one. You're asking the questions that you want to know, and you're getting you're getting personal with the people of that faith.
There are some numbers that you might want to call. We're going to post them up for Reverend Michael and Reverend Valerie to call them and find out what is it else that you want to find out about the Multi-Faith Exchange. There's the website, of course, that you may want to go to, which is going to tell you a lot. But mostly, I think, having met today Linda Mack, who is the co-founder of this wonderful group, Harlan, who comes from Baha'i Faith and is finding this very meaningful today, and the two coordinators who this year are keeping this program in high gear, we want to thank the Torphys for being here today.
Thank you.
Till next time, God bless.
Thank you.